let's go down to the details for the 2019. Sinong mga nakinabang doon? Sinong mga, ma-identify nyo ba? O sige, wag na mga pangalan.
Your study mentioned 20 senatorial candidates.
Not really that. We tried to look at all the activities ng
So you monitored
senatorial
20
campaigns.
candidates?
Yeah, more or less 20
Okay.
candidates.
Kasama ba dyan yung mga merong historical revisionism?
Meron naman.
Kasama dyan?
Kasama dyan.
Kasama.
Yan yung mga kasama.
How do you choose the 20?
Well, to begin with, we tried to parang monitor everyone. Pero may mga certain candidates kasi na mas
More
vocal.
prevalent.
Mas
ang
prevalent.
use
Yeah.
of the micro.
Not
Of
necessarily.
software.
Of social
Of
media.
social media.
For
Okay.
example, you have Ocho Derecho candidates who are very vocal on Twitter and then very
Okay.
much into social media. So we try to follow those. And also the pro-administration candidates who have received a lot of buzz in social media.
So
Okay, now that
you
just-
followed both, ha?
Yeah, we followed both,
Opposition
yeah.
and
Across all
pro-administration.
political
Si
spectrums.
Edling daw, pinalo nyo? Okay. Now, wait,
Imemohan ko na nga ito.
Isa micro na yan, micro-vlogger.
But just to clarify, before we get into, because the title of your project is Digital Disinformation, and I understand that that has to do with the content. No? So before we get into the content, just a word about the structure that you've identified, specifically going from macro influencers to micro influencers. Nobody's saying yet that you're not saying that these micro influencers or even the macro ones are fake. These are real people. The disinformation does not start with necessarily with fake accounts. These are legitimate accounts. Okay, so now we focus on the content. That's where the disinformation lies?
Yes, so for example, one of our findings is it's not just micro media influencers. There are different innovations from 2016 to 2019. So one of those is the utilization of closed groups on Facebook, which is harder to monitor because you can't delete it if you're Facebook. Only the moderators can delete it.
Yeah.
And since it's a closed group, it's harder to counter-check.
But you can monitor that?
No, but how do you know there's disinformation if it's a closed group?
We
How
joined
do
the
you know?
group.
You infiltrate the group.
It's part of our field.
Yeah.
We joined
So
the
what
group.
kind of disinformation was there?
So for example, we penetrated some of the conspiracy-based groups online, Filipino conspiracy-based groups online, and we found content regarding the fake wealth of the Marcoses or events about, for example, President Duterte kicking the UN out of the Philippines, which didn't happen because how can you do that? But people are lapping it up. And for other members of that group who are asking about it or saying, why are we talking about this? This is not what this group is for. The administrators are actually quick to shut those comments down.
But I would imagine that, I'm just trying to imagine the limitations of the researchers.
Yeah.
I mean, this must be anecdotal. Or is there a real way to do this, scientifically do this with a real representative sample of groups that you've penetrated? Ito mga taga-UP, infiltrator
All
talaga.
right. No, and not only that, I'm sure that the disinformation existed both in all parties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Yes,
candidates.
So how
Findings.
representative is the
So,
penetration?
we do admit that there are certain limitations sa study namin. Like the examples that we provide in terms of like closed groups, we dive into two specific groups. One is the OFWs and the other one is flat earthers. And I'm sure there's much more, out there. A lot of different groups that employ also
The
different
flat earthers.
Yeah,
Why
why
is
the
flat
flat
earthers?
and OFWs?
Why? Are
siguro
they politically
For
oriented?
the Flat Earthers, it generated buzz because of a recent event where a veteran journalist.
Yes.
So that event, and we were intrigued because the page that she posted, the Twitter page that she posted, was openly pro Duterte, and we were thinking, so is there a connection? And then when we looked at the Facebook groups, we can see that most of the moderators, most of the administrators actually have like pages or followed pages that are pro Duterte, and then that's where they're seeding the content from. And these are real accounts. These are real people. So
What about the overseas groups? Why them specifically?
The OFWs.
So the OFWs, they have huge memberships, hundreds of thousands. Tapos, na hindi siya napopulis. And then you leave it up to the OFWs talaga to moderate content. So initially, we thought that it was interesting. It would be curious to find out what they're talking about. And if you're going to look at, do an initial check of, for example, OFW groups on Facebook. Maraming different sorts. May iba from Malaysia or whatever. But there are also specific OFW groups that are politically motivated. Na tipong pro-Duterte OFWs in Malaysia, and then Ocho Derecho, for example, in specific places. So we wanted to know what conversations were happening within these groups. Kasi ayaw din namin na i-confine yung project na dun lang sa kung anong nakikita namin.
Okay, but let's be clear, without getting to the details of the
Yes.
tactics, because we'll get into that further. Whatever tactics you identified, all parties were using, both sides, whether pro or anti-Duterte opposition, everybody was basically employing the
Or
same
more
tactics.
to the point, who was doing more of that?
Yeah, okay. So in terms of quantifying who did more, it would be really difficult to tell. But we could confidently say that both sides, both the administration and the opposition, are employing these
same
strategies,
tactics.
the same tactics. So there are specific camps, for example, who are more into political parodies than the other. And then there are some more that are there are specific camps that use more of the alternative news sites or all these things.
But are both essentially guilty of
Yes.
spreading some disinformation?
Yes,
Okay.
not just some, like
A lot.
of
Okay.
disinformation.
Okay.